At first glance, the new Sony WH-1000XM4s look identical to the Sony WH-1000XM3s. And you wouldn't be wrong to assume that the 1000XM4s are just a minor refresh of the 1000XM3s. But there's actually a lot more going on here, both externally and internally. So today we're going to be checking out the new Sony 1000XM4s. But we're also going to be comparing them to the Sony 1000XM3s and see if it's worth upgrading for you. But we're also going to be comparing them to the Sony 1000XM2s, just so that you can see how far these headphones have come. So first off, there's price. Just like the 1000XM3s and 1000XM2s before it, the new Sony 1000XM4s retail for $350. Putting them squarely in the premium ANC headphone category. So, if you want to pick these headphones up, they'll be linked down below. Now, before we actually get to the headphones themselves, I want to quickly address the carrying case here, because even the case has gotten an upgrade. Now, size-wise, this case is very similar to the two previous cases, but what really caught me by surprise when I first held this case is just how much sturdier this case is. This case is a lot harder than the previous two cases. And when you open this case up, just like before, you've got a storage compartment that stores your cables and airplane adapter. Now, Sony could have easily just kept using the 1000XM3's case and call it a day, but I'm really happy to see that Sony has also been improving their cases along with their headphones. So if you do plan on commuting or traveling a lot with your headphones, then you can rest assured that your 1000XM4s are going to be perfectly safe when they're in your backpack or carry-on. But now let's get to the headphones themselves. Like I mentioned at the top of this video, at first glance the 1000XM4s look identical to the 1000XM3s, but they're not. The 1000XM4s do have some significant physical differences from the 1000XM3s, which mainly affects fit. And personally, I'm just glad that Sony has been refining this design, because the design of the 1000XM2s is just fugly. Now, build quality wise, the first thing that you're going to notice about the 1000XM4s when you hold them in your hands is that these headphones have a mostly slate finish to them, whereas the 1000XM3s are a combination of soft touch surfaces and smooth plastic body panels. Ultimately, the build quality of the 1000XM4s is on par with the build quality on the 1000XM3s. These headphones feel very sturdy in the hand, there's a good click when you extend their headband, and there's zero cracking or squeaking whenever you flex them. They're not better or worse, they're just different. But definitely the build quality on the 1000XM4s is miles better than the 1000XM2s. Now, when it comes to fit, this is where we start to see some major progression. First off, all of these headphones are big head approved because none of them have a lot of clamping force. But clamping force has never really been a problem for Sony's headphones. What has been, though, are their earpads. The earpads on the original 1000Xs and 1000XM2s are very cramped, and these cramped earpads are in large part why a lot of people went with the Bose QC35s back in 2016 and 2017, even though the Sonys had better ANC and a lot more features. Now, the earpads on the 1000XM3s are significantly more spacious than the earpads on the 1000XM2s, but their earpads still might not fit people with larger ears or ears that stick out a lot all that great when compared to other headphones out there. But now, with the 1000XM4s, again, these earpads are a little more spacious. Now, they're not as spacious as the Bose NC700s, but you do notice an improvement over the 1000XM3s, and these headphones should have an easier time fitting a larger section of the population. But another major thing to take into consideration here is that the earpads on the 1000XM4s have a little less surface area coming in contact with your skin than both the 1000XM3s and 1000XM2s, meaning that their earpads heat up a little slower, improving comfort. Now, during their keynote, Sony made a big point about saying that they reduced the weight of the 1000XM4s to help improve comfort. Now, granted, the 1000XM4s weigh in at 254 grams, making them very easy to forget that you have them on, and in general, they are rather lightweight because most premium ANC headphones weigh in around 270 to 290 grams. But the 1000XM3s weigh in at 255 grams, so there isn't that big of a difference as Sony made it out to be. However, the 1000XM4s are significantly lighter than the 1000XM2s, which weigh in at a hefty 275 grams by comparison. So if you're someone that is still holding on to their 1000XM2s, I say that the fit and comfort alone on the 1000XM4s is a big enough reason to upgrade. Their earpads are way more spacious and they're much lighter. However, if you have the 1000XM3s and they fit you just fine, then the fit of the 1000XM4s isn't going to be a big enough reason to justify an upgrade. Now, even though I like the new slate finish and improved fit on the 1000XM4s, something that I do gotta point out here is the leatherette on these headphones. Just like their predecessors, the leatherette on the 1000XM4s still feels very synthetic. Now, the leatherette on these headphones is passable, but it just doesn't feel as nice as the leatherette on a lot of other premium ANC headphones out there, and even some mid-tier ANC headphones that have been recently released. But now let's talk about tech specs. Battery life-wise, things haven't really changed here. All of these headphones still have an advertised battery life of 30 hours with their ANC turned on, which is still a little above average for ANC headphones in 2020. And you can always stretch out their battery life to around 38 hours if you use them with their ANC turned off. Now, both the 1000XM4s and 1000XM3s charge via a USB-C port, which is a given at this point. Whereas the 1000XM2s charge via a micro USB port, which is a little inconvenient at this point. Now, the fast charging on these newer models is also significantly better than the fast charging on the 1000XM2s. If you charge up the 1000XM2s for 10 minutes from a dead battery, they're only going to get you 1 hour of playback time. Whereas both the 1000XM4s and 1000XM3s are both going to get you 5 hours of playback time from that same 10-minute charge. But one major upgrade the 1000XM4s have finally gotten, and this is something that I feel that the 1000XM3s should have had, is that they can simultaneously be connected to 2 devices at the same time, so you can easily hot swap from one device to another. So this means you can go from using these headphones with your phone and then quickly switch over to using them with your computer. Whereas with these other 2 headphones and a lot of other Sony headphones currently on sale right now, they can only be connected to one device at a time. Now, ultimately, it's not a huge deal that your headphones can easily hot swap from one device to another, but it is really nice to be able to. However, there is one small trade-off. If you want to be able to connect to multiple devices at the same time with the 1000XM4s, then you're strictly going to use AAC. Now, if you're an iPhone user, this doesn't matter because iPhones top out at AAC anyways. But if you're an Android user, you won't be able to use LDAC, which is Sony's high-res audio codec. If you're an Android user and you must use LDAC with the 1000XM4s, then they can only be connected to one device at a time. But at least look on the bright side, at least they're not reverting all the way back to SBC. Now, while we're on the topic of audio codecs, the 1000XM4s have support for SBC, AAC, and LDAC. And unfortunately, they are losing support for aptX and aptX HD, which is something both the 1000XM3s and 1000XM2s both have. But in general, Sony is phasing out aptX because their more recent headphones have all lost aptX support. But like I said, if you're an iPhone user, this doesn't matter. But what does matter is that when it comes to watching movies or videos on your phone, these headphones have zero latency across the board, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. And these headphones still have zero latency to them even when they're connected to two devices at the same time, which is something that's very important to point out because some headphones out there do develop a slight latency to them when they're connected to two devices at the same time. However, even though these headphones don't have any noticeable latency to them when you're watching movies or videos on your phone, tablet, or computer, you still can't use them to monitor your audio in Final Cut Pro, because in that instance, they do develop a noticeable latency to them. So in that regard, you still want to use a wired connection. And thankfully, these headphones still have an easy to reach 3.5mm audio jack. There's no 2.5mm audio jack nonsense going on here, and there's also no, we're gonna get rid of the audio jack on your premium headphones even though we're really not ready. But don't worry, we're still gonna overcharge you for an audio to lightning port cable like Apple does. But minor rant aside, I also want to quickly point out that you still can't use the USB-C port on these headphones as a wired connection like you can with the Sennheiser Momentum 3s. If you want to use a wired connection with the 1000XM4s, you still gotta strictly use the audio jack. But now let's talk about listening to music with these headphones. First off, I gotta point out that thankfully these headphones are still using 40mm drivers, just like the 1000XM3s and 1000XM2s. And it's important to point this out because the WH-710Ns are using 30mm drivers and the Huron 3s are using 25mm drivers, which really did end up reducing their bass. Now, for all intents and purposes, the 1000XM4s sound identical to the 1000XM3s. But both the 1000XM4s and 1000XM3s sound better than the 1000XM2s because they have far better clarity and don't suffer from any distortion on the higher end. Now, in general, the 1000XM4s are a pair of good sounding headphones and they're going to be able to please most people. From a technical side, these headphones have good clarity, they have a decent soundstage and decent instrument separation, the highs don't get tinny, and the bass never bottoms out. But the soundstage on the 1000XM4s hasn't been improved from the 1000XM3s. So there are plenty of other headphones out there that sound more open. And just like the 1000XM3s, the bass on the 1000XM4s airs more on the physical side and doesn't resonate all that much to induce goosebumps like some other headphones out there can. But nonetheless, like I said, these headphones are definitely people pleasers because thanks to their fully customizable EQ, you can make them sound however you want. If you like a neutral EQ or vocals heavy EQ, you can do that, or if you like a bass heavy EQ, you can also do that. And the bass on these headphones is going to physically rattle your head a good amount, and it should satiate most people. Now, personally, I just like using these headphones with their stock EQ, but I do like switching these headphones over to a more bass-heavy EQ when I'm going to watch movies with them, because having that physical bass on these headphones does add an extra level of immersiveness to whatever you're watching. However, if you are an Android user who really wants to use their own EQ with their 1000XM4s, I'm really happy to say that these headphones still continue to use LDAC even when you're using your own EQ. Because with the 1000XM3s, if you wanted to use your own EQ settings on an Android device, then they would revert to using SBC. And unfortunately, the 1000XM3s just don't sound as rich or as full when they're using SBC than when they're using LDAC. But for iPhone users, you're going to top out at AAC. So no matter what EQ you use on the 1000XM4s or 1000XM3s, they're both going to use AAC no matter what EQ you use. Now, when it comes to controlling your music, just like before, the 1000XM4s have a touchpad on the right ear cup. You can swipe up or down to adjust the volume, and pro tip, you can also swipe up or down and hold to continuously raise or lower the volume, and you can swipe front or back to skip through your music. And the touchpad on these headphones is easy to use and they have a large percentage of accuracy. There's a slight learning curve at first, and on occasion you are going to get missed inputs, but the touchpads on these headphones aren't problematic. But one new feature the 1000XM4s do have is that they have wear sensors. So when you take these headphones off, they'll automatically pause your music, and then when you put them back on, they'll start playing your music again. Now personally, I'm not a really big fan of wear sensors, so I'm just glad that you can easily turn them off through their app. But I do want to point out just how janky their exposed wear sensors look. There are plenty of other headphones out there that have wear sensors that are very accurate, and their wear sensors are also very inconspicuous. So the exposed wear sensor on these headphones just makes it look like they were an afterthought. But now let's talk about the active noise cancellation on these headphones. This is basically what put Sony on the map, and it's the main reason why the 1000XM3s have been so popular. Just like before, the active noise cancellation on the 1000XM4s doesn't change how your music sounds at all, which still does happen with a lot of headphones out there, namely the Bowers & Wilkins PX7. The active noise cancellation on the 1000XM4s also doesn't have all that much cabin pressure, like let's say the Bose QC35s. And just as you'd expect, the 1000XM4s are blocking out an impressive amount of noise. But so that you can see for yourself, we're gonna jump into an ANC test. So like you may have just seen, the Sony 1000XM4s are blocking out an impressive amount of noise. But unfortunately, from my findings, I cannot say that the 1000XM4s have improved active noise cancellation from the 1000XM3s. From this controlled test where all of these headphones are blocking out the same audio samples in the same room, I can't help but feel that the ANC on the 1000XM3s is a little better. When it came to blocking out road noise or the constant low frequency sound, the 1000XM4s have a bit of a high-pitched tone to them in the background, whereas the 1000XM3s don't. And when it came to blocking out chatter or the random higher frequency sound, the 1000XM4s let in noticeably more chatter in than the 1000XM3s. Now, obviously, before running all of these tests, I ran the noise cancellation optimizer on all of these headphones. But for right now, I gotta say the ANC on the Sony 1000XM3s running their 4.5.2 firmware outperforms the Sony 1000XM4s running their 2.0.6 firmware, which is the latest firmware at the time of this recording. Ultimately, I'm just splitting hairs here for differences most people won't even notice because the 1000XM4s have impressive active noise cancellation, period. But we are gonna have to revisit the ANC performance on the Sony 1000XM4s after they get another firmware update. Now, when it comes to the ambient mode on these headphones, thankfully the ambient mode on the 1000XM4s hasn't been changed. The ambient mode on these headphones sounds very natural. There's zero hissing in the background, which is super important for when you're watching movies or videos on your phone. And the microphone array on these headphones pick up 0 to very little wind noise when walking outdoors. And that applies for when these headphones have their ambient mode or active noise cancellation turned on. But one of the biggest reasons why I like the ambient mode on these headphones so much, besides being able to adjust how much noise these headphones let in and just how good it sounds, is that these headphones have an active ambient mode, which is still pretty rare these days. Basically, when you have the ambient mode on these headphones turned on, they're going to actively block out sudden spikes and loud noises, saving you from jump scares. But let me just show you what I'm talking about, and also slight headphone warning. So, like you may have just seen, when these headphones detected that sudden spike in loud noise, they turned off their ambient mode. And when that loud noise stopped, they turned their ambient mode back on. Personally, I love when headphones have an active ambient mode because it can save you from jump scares, and it's also very handy for when your dog starts barking when the UPS man comes around. Now, a new feature on the 1000XM4s, which Sony is really trying to push on these headphones, is their new speak to chat feature, which I like to think of as an extension of their ambient mode, and it works a little like this. Hello there! So this is speak to chat. Basically, whenever I start talking, the headphones will automatically lower the volume of your music and pump in all of the ambient sound around you, so that you can talk to someone without even to have to touch your headphones. And then, once you're done talking, you can either wait for the headphones themselves to start playing music again, or you can double tap on the touchpad. We all know that it's a lie. But ultimately, Speak to Chat is gonna be one of those features that I file under the gimmick folder, and I'm just not gonna use. Now, Speak to Chat doesn't get activated when other people are talking around you. It does a really good job of rejecting that. But if you do decide to use these headphones with Speak to Chat enabled, you gotta be completely silent. Speak to Chat is going to get activated if you're singing along to your music, if you're thinking out loud, even very quietly. And Speak to Chat also gets activated on these headphones when you start laughing, which is a really big problem if you're listening to the Flagrant 2 podcast. So overall, the days that I did try to use these headphones with Speak to Chat enabled, they just randomly paused my music, becoming more of a nuisance rather than helpful. Now, the reason why Sony developed Speak to Chat is because people told them that they wanted to be able to talk to other people without having to take their headphones off or even having to touch them. Now, just like a lot of other Sony headphones out there, the 1000XM4s still have quick attention. So when you cover the touchpad on these headphones, they're going to lower the volume of your music and let in all of the ambient sound around you so that you can quickly talk to someone without having to take your headphones off, like this. And when you let go, they'll go back to normal again. But the problem with quick attention is that you gotta constantly keep their touchpad covered. So if you're trying to have a quick conversation with someone like this looks and feels very awkward. All Sony has to do is that they gotta make it so that when you fully cover the touchpad on their headphones for a full second, they'll get locked into quick attention mode. You can have your hands free like a normal human and have your conversation. And then when you're done, you can just double tap on the touchpad and then the headphones will go back to normal again. Now, this small change will make quick attention easier, more convenient, and more comfortable to use. And it'll also be a better solution than Speak to Chat. And Sony can easily add this fix to all of their headphones through a software update. But finally, here's the microphone test. Now, this is an area where Sony has really been struggling for a while now. Now, technically, yes, the microphone on these headphones is an improvement from previous generations, but my voice still doesn't sound super clear. But something these headphones is doing very well is blocking out this AC unit. Because if we were to switch over to my lapel microphone, you're going to clearly hear that AC unit. But if we were to switch back over to the Sony 1000XM4s, you don't hear it as much. Whereas if we were to switch over to the Sony 1000XM3s, they block out that AC unit a little bit, but you can still hear it in the background. And if we were to switch over to the Sony 1000XM2s, you can clearly hear that AC unit in the background. So even though the microphone on the 1000XM4s isn't the best, it is technically an improvement. So with all that being said, the Sony WH-1000XM4s are still a great pair of headphones, and Sony is clearly just trying to refine what they know already works. The biggest difference between the Sony WH-1000XM4 and Sony WH-1000XM3 is going to boil down to their fit. The ear cups on the WH-1000XM4s are just a little more spacious than the ear cups on the WH-1000XM3. But other than that, there's really no reason to upgrade or even worry about FOMO. These headphones sound the same, they have the same great ambient mode, and they have the same great battery life. If you were curious about speak-to-chat, ultimately to me it's just a gimmick and I doubt a lot of people are going to use it. But then there's the active noise cancellation on these headphones. Even though the ANC on the WH-1000XM4 is great, I can't help but feel that the ANC on the WH-1000XM3 is still a little better. So maybe there needs to be some firmware refinement. And even though the microphone on the WH-1000XM4 has been improved, it still needs some work. But nonetheless, the Sony WH-1000XM4s are still a solid pair of ANC headphones, and they're gonna be the obvious choice for most people. And if for some reason you're still holding on to the WH-1000XM2s, it's definitely time for an upgrade. But nonetheless, I still feel the WH-1000XM4s still have a little more room for refinement, and Sony, don't get comfortable. And also, will you please just fix quick attention? If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. It helps out more than you realize. If you want to pick another products up mentioned in this video, those will be linked in the description down below, and you can also support the channel by checking out the merch store. But other than that, I'll catch you next time.